Welcome back to FastGadgets. We're here to talk about tech, and today we're going to talk about why I will not consider buying a Lenovo Yoga 920. First of all, most of you know that I already own the Lenovo Yoga 910. Now, considering the differences between the 910 and the 920, although they're relatively small, there are some significant improvements. One of the big differences, of course, is that the chin cam that was located at the bottom of the Yoga 910 is now located at the top of the 920, so you no longer have to have that awkward angle. That's a big change. One of the other changes that have been talked about is the fact that the shift key on the right side, which was very short, is now much, much longer. And probably the most compelling reason to consider purchasing the Yoga 920 is the fact that it now has the Coffee Lake quad-core i7 processor, which is nice, I will admit. But we're here to talk about the reasons I won't get it, and one of them actually is the processor, so we might as well hit on that right now. When you look at the Geekbench scores for the Yoga 920, you can see that the multi-core score is definitely going to be way better than the Yoga 910, which only has the dual core. However, the single core is in keeping and pace with the Yoga 920, so they're both approximately the same, and I'm going to put up the scores here so you can have a look at them. The other factor is the Yoga 910 actually runs at 2.7 gigahertz. Now this, looking at that and comparing it to the 1.8 gigahertz of the Yoga 920 is quite a difference. Now the Yoga 920 does have an 8 megabyte cache on die, and the Yoga 910 has a 4 megabyte cache on die, so you do see a better single core score and quite frankly multi-core score in Geekbench 4. But why is the processor clock so low in comparison to the 7th generation Kaby Lake processor in the Yoga 910? And the answer is very simple: because of thermal throttling issues. And we're going to get into that quite a bit. See, the key here is that yes, you do have 4 cores, but the innards, essentially the design of the Yoga 920 is exactly the same as the 910. They have the same fans, same heatsink piping. Everything is identical. So what that means is with the additional cores, you're going to get the same processor throttling due to higher temperatures on the actual processor itself. Is that a big issue? No, not really. One of the huge criticisms of the Yoga 910 was essentially that it was very loud and that the fan made a lot of noise. How did Lenovo fix that issue? What they did was create a quiet mode in the UEFI BIOS so that when you were using that particular system, the fan would actually only go basically to low or medium speed at the very most, so it was very, very quiet. But with that, you get more thermal throttling, and unfortunately you lose about 5 to 7% in my testing in benchmarks as well as in real-time use. So when I rendered videos, for example, I would get about 5 to 7% more performance if I left the UEFI BIOS setting in performance mode, or there's another mode called balanced mode. So the 920, theoretically, at least what everybody is saying, is much, much quieter. And my theory is the way they're doing that is in the BIOS. It's not a design change over the Yoga 910. It's essentially the same chassis and the same design. So the only way they can be doing that is with throttling down the processor and slowing the fan down. Now it is possible that the fans that are inside the system are better designed, so it could be quieter for that reason too, but more than likely it is basically throttling down that particular processor. And finally, the biggest reason I will not consider a Yoga 920 is simply the price. In order to get a unit with the same specs, at least equivalent to the Yoga 910 that I already have, I would have to spend $17.99 versus the $14.99 that I originally paid for my system, the Yoga 910. So we're looking at a $300 markup for a nominal increase in processor speed at best, and a longer and better designed shift key on the keyboard. So those are basically the two big things. And of course the third, the chin cam, has been moved up to the top. So $300 for those three features, not really going to work for me. Now, thinking of the shift key, many people have asked me, well, how can you stand typing with that right shift key being so small? Before I actually went out and bought the Yoga 910, I used another computer and typed and thought about the way that I type and the style I use. And I found out, even though you're not supposed to, just out of habit, I found that the majority of the time I actually type capital letters with my left pinky. So I'm using the left shift key the majority of the time. If the key absolutely cannot be reached and allow me to use my pinky on the left shift key, then I use the right shift key. It took me about 2 to 3 days of some fairly simple training to actually get used to the right shorter shift key. And I found after that it wasn't a big issue at all, and I could type fine. It's kind of odd because what I do on other computers now is move my pinky on the right side much farther over so that I can hit the smaller shift key. So I've found that I've adjusted on any keyboard now, so it simply doesn't matter. I mean, that I now have a kind of a new typing habit that works perfectly fine and doesn't slow down my typing. So given the differences that are worth buying between the Yoga 910 and the Yoga 920, which is the chin cam being moved up, the longer shift key, and the Coffee Lake processor, I personally would X out the two. Coffee Lake processor, not enough processor increase, and the shift key, not an issue. It's not too difficult to learn to type a little bit different to use the shorter shift key. Now my hands are probably, I would say, medium size, so for me using that shift key is easy, but if somebody had smaller hands, it might be impossible for them to do. They might have to lift their fingers off the home keys altogether to move over, and that might be a big issue, but for me it wasn't. So the Yoga 920 just isn't viable, although it's a beautiful computer. Now, they are trying at Lenovo really hard to compete with the Macs that have come out and release a premium product. Is the Yoga 920 a premium product? Yes, absolutely. Are you in the market and willing to pay $1,800 for the 16 gigabyte, 1 terabyte SSD? Then in that case, yes, it's a wonderful model. There are other models that are less expensive, but I'm comparing the Yoga 910 that I have to the Yoga 920. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. I have the i7 processor, Kaby Lake in the 910, and I have a 512 gigabyte SSD. So as much as I would like the additional storage, to me, a system that basically jumped in price by $300, and if we look at the rate of inflation, which on average is usually around 3%, even if we double that, if we doubled the rate of inflation at 6% on this particular system, the Yoga 920, we should be looking at a $70 to $80 price increase for inflation over the last year. The fact is, the $300 jump indicates that these companies that are trying to release premium products and compete with Apple really, I think, are shooting themselves in the foot, because Apple, of course, has created this mantra, this feeling when you purchase something, the out-of-box experience, if you will, and people are willing to pay for that premium product. Now, I don't know how many computers Lenovo sells on average, but if you were in the market and you wanted a Windows computer and you wanted it to be at least as nice as a Mac, I think the Yoga 920 would be an excellent option for you. And there are other models. You can get an HD screen and an i5 processor, and it cuts the price way down. But what I bought a year ago at $14.99 and what you can buy today, same hardware, just the newer processor version, adds $300. So no matter how you slice it, you're going to pay more, because Lenovo, they're kind of seeing the writing on the wall and they're saying there is a market out there for premium products. People are willing to buy it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you're interested and you want to buy me a cup of coffee, consider dropping by my Patreon website. Link will be below in the description. And maybe drop $1 for a cup of coffee if you're interested, if you're enjoying the videos. Also, if you will, and you did enjoy the video, share. I'll see you next time on Fast Gadgets.